Matin va agus fart éf go committee call agus bunstructure a hakala te tron mar seo agus tro Microsoft Teams. Den of cíine go bhfuil na microphone of ac bhé an da chuidir Teams agus na fónig in live. Ma ha se bheith géisteach is an idir hengachuig agus go bhfuil se bheith an pnín chuidir éid microphone. Mas tásig sin mi é de chorliche newsmodisten treuriche le fachkultuurni.
Lord our God, we thank you that we can come before you at this, the beginning of a new day in our experience in this world. And as we begin the business of this day, Lord, that we could set our thoughts and our affections on the things that are above for a little while. We thank you for your mercies which are new to us each day, Lord. We ask that you will bless us richly, each and every one individually and collectively. You know our needs, you know our requirements, you know our souls, Lord. O Lord, we know that we come before you as the one who knows us intimately. So therefore, Lord, we come before you not as strangers, but we pray that those who are outside of grace this day, Lord, that they would know thy saving grace. For that is the most important thing, Lord. We deliberate from day to day on business that we are able to do, Lord. And we thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to do the business that we have been asked to do, both as elected members and as officers for this council. O Lord, we are grateful to you for the health and strength that we have, the gift of life that we get each day, Lord, the natural gift of life, but that you would lead us, Lord, to the gift of eternal life, which is most important. We are grateful to you for all that you do for us, and as we look up to thine own holy hill this day, Lord, from whence doth come our aid, we know that our safety cometh from the Lord, who heaven and earth hath made. We are grateful to you for restoring health for Councillor McKeever and McLean, who are back with us in this chamber, Lord, following surgery. O Lord, we thank you for your healing hand upon them, that you will continue to be with them. Any others who are under thy hand in illness this day, Lord. O Lord, we know that we take life so often for granted. We often think that tomorrow will follow today. We know that that is not the case, Lord, as we are made so constantly aware of the brevity of life. You were the chair, Lord, of this committee. We thank you for his diligence over many, many years, Lord, and his faithfulness to this committee. All the officers that report into this committee also, Lord. We pray for our colleagues from Openridge and from Calmac who are with us this day, Lord, in the chamber and online, with them in the work that they do, Lord. O Lord, we have so much to be thankful for. Go before us now in the deliberations of this committee and the rest of this day, and pardon us freely for our many sins. Amen.
Tak leirtanis. Chonju an eist ga chláireg. An le dain bhí stúring na cónju chuine na lenas na ar cíine. Ma hasir na bailtin committee agus fialach dro computer fagaf camera eid agus microphone ye. Ma ha officein a fialach dro computer fagaf ye an dachuit mar ilshiv a bien di aasgna fikers kist. Chuin an gaine bhil agus officein go bhfuil system féus in deomar. As machtig charige in a mics. A mic a hietaine a féu a builske goine agus bí an gór oine in an stad. An nooit an likis a charige a stui mic arige a mic go derag. Chavi ach da vek derag ag amsen bí. Ma ha se verson tilke keist vak of mic eid. Agus ma ha officein a pien jaas chorlichen edef an nurut a janu. Het piavachus a horste bhil a chomity. An a daim die klare goed fémi bhil an jammer akel no kirche chuid éistig of a wild schief. Ik kusper het tegen gaarlik dedig na konju agus behoorte bhil a chomity agus na hoffike immigi fuidig agus hierin eis boeg komparst ele a konju akel. Gwyn cwtioch na'r cynnig gyfel a chwnio wedi clarig agus bia eith warach lŷn y corl a stio'i na cwnio. Wys ys ni'n eich go ger chwndys yn chiad chwsbar ger chwndys na cwnio eith siela ffychyd yn dawyn dawil y cwd cyrichyd agus hyn son yndig. Wil siw gyndig eich? Ja, ach bleef. Alle kusper kerhundus konju heiten se schachgelag in dawing dawiles ko kiriket sashen son vissergeug. Dres kusper klare uit me ha ujek bwyl an y gwsperson fi i chwar oprwch bwhori aif sy'n y chwarig. Fe gael ffilmol yn eisiau bwyl an over iddo fel i at y chwarig wrs chwsper. Dyn y chwarig wyd. Niel. Closes in eis go cwsper y ced in hasgu an y bwnstractor bawnblein gigabyte. Da fil y cwci dichet, da fil y dichet dichet. Tashbane geshoch le Openridge. Bevallen faalte chwede mashte Rapperst Thorburn studige comparstiges Openridge alape Cambria. Aus a ven uasol Sera Eilean o realtas na halape. Sjå a hiet kundes fisrige aan de streep o Openridge. Aus maar een vis een project de goste jars tili eet hun hometi letullig fisrige. Agus be codman and tullig Christian a chuidára can amshin. So I'll hand over to Mr. Thorburn to take us through the presentation. More in time. Can you put your mic on, Sarah? Yeah.
Okay. I'll kick off again. Good morning, Comhairle. I'm Sarah Eilean, not Robert Thorburn, just to save any confusion on that front. Good morning. I'm Sarah Eilean, Broadband Programme Director for Scottish Government. Thank you very much for having us along here today. Exciting time to be able to come to speak to you. You may have seen the recent announcement in the press this week about fibre build. Well underway within the Western Isles, so it's good to be able to dig into that a little bit more and hear from yourself about your target and priority areas. I'm going to kick off with a little bit of an overview in terms of the UK government and Scottish government perspective and give you a feel for the overall programmes before diving into what's happening in the Western Isles, and then Robert's going to dig into the detail in terms of the fibre build plan and the areas that we're already planned, targeting, and what comes next, and welcome questions at the end. So both the Scottish Government and the UK Government are investing over £1 billion in taking faster gigabit technology further within the UK. This has been recently supported by the Scottish Government with the inclusion of digital connectivity being a key component of their infrastructure strategy that's currently out for consultation as being the way to deliver reliable, resilient, future capable connectivity across Scotland. UK Government also has a similar commitment to deliver up to 99% of premises across the UK to allow them to have access to gigabit technology. And that was reconfirmed last summer in their spending review. And amongst a sea of revisions in terms of budgets and financial investment, it's a continued element from both governments has been the continued investment in connectivity, in particular fibre broadband. What we have just now are two programmes that are underway in Scotland. Firstly, the R100 programme, which has been underway for 5 years now. That's got the investment from Scottish Government of over £600 million. That builds on the work of the Superfast broadband programme that you may have been aware of, and is looking to take the fibre broadband particularly to rural and island communities, really targeting those areas that will see this once in a generation opportunity. There's also the Project Gigabit in Scotland contract. That's the money that's coming from UK Government, and those contracts start to get signed last year. We have 3 in place with 2 more procurements coming along. The benefit of what we have is utilising existing suppliers who know the areas. Both the R100 contracts and one of the gigabit contracts are being provided by Openreach, and again, bringing that knowledge and experience. We're also managing to diversify and bring in other suppliers as well through the 2 other contracts. I should also add, as well as the contracts, we've got the Superfast voucher broadband scheme as well, which allows those users and premises that are not included in the contracts to also get improved connectivity through a variety of technologies. So far, building off the backbone of the investment in the Superfast broadband infrastructure, we've delivered over 96,000 premises across Scotland. That's to homes and to businesses. I think this is really tip of the iceberg in terms of what's been done. we're 15 million metres of ducting and cabling that's been laid, taking us from Perth in Scotland to Perth in Australia. That's planning, that's digging up, whether on verges or across private land, and the work that goes into that is massive. An example of it is the over 10,400 way leaves that need to be negotiated and agreed. As we go further into rural areas, less opportunity to build on public land, and so this is where it's crucial to get that agreement to be building the network and benefiting as many premises as we can and getting access across private land. We've also, as you can see here, really been targeting islands, and I say it's got 4 islands here, but there's certainly many more that we've been serving, whether it's been Iona, Westray, Lismore, Siar. These is completed build. I think the aim of particularly of the Scottish Government programme and our work with the UK Government is to look at whole community solutions. We're not going into these areas just to be picking off certain premises. The benefits that you get from this, as I'll come on to talk about, is really when you look at delivering to whole communities. And what we have is the ability with the 2 programmes and with Scottish Government in managing those contracts to be able to get the best result for Scotland and for the communities. I've talked about extending the network, and an important part of the network is the subsea cabling. Back in the DSSB days, we put a lot of investment in subsea cables, and you'll see by the yellow lines here, that's what started to link up the islands and extend that network infrastructure. This is obviously not just about connecting to one island. When you do a subsea cable to one island, it then allows you to link into the others and really again opens up that possibility and opportunity for further investment. What we do is work with Openreach to ensure that we do these in the programme as early as possible. It's not just about the planning, it's about getting the boats here and the coordination and the weather, as we know, in terms of making sure that we can put these subsea cables in as early as possible to open up that opportunity. As you'll see here, the main islands in the Western Isles are now connected with subsea cables, so we have the basis for that network to push on. I wanted just to share with you some early work that we've done on the R100 programme, which shows the benefit and the impact that's coming through from our early activity. This is not a comprehensive report that we published in November, but it starts to give you the indicators of where we're seeing the impact of faster and gigabit broadband. We're seeing it in relation to productivity, so businesses being able to access new markets, being more efficient in how they engage, improved access to public services, whether that's health or education, improved well-being. People feel that they're tied into their community, they know what's going on, and also in relation to resilience, they understand when there's things change, ferries are cancelled, roads are closed, and therefore can plan accordingly. We will be building on this evaluation activity because I think it's felt across Openreach and with ourselves, this is where you show where this investment can make a difference, both in the short term but also in the longer term. Focusing particularly on Western Isles, as I say, the foundations were really laid with the superfast broadband contract. We've got 2 live contracts in the Western Isles, one through R100 and one through the Gigabit in Scotland contract. Both, though, are delivered by Openreach, and that's where the real opportunity comes from. BDUK has the drive of maximising coverage, again going back to that 99% of the UK being covered by gigabit coverage. Scottish Government is enhancing that by looking at maximising deployment in rural and island areas. This is, as I mentioned, a whole community approach. The once and done, we're going into the islands, we're going into these rural areas and getting as much as we can from the suppliers and the supply chain being there. Hence why we're coming to you as we start that build and that planning exercise to make sure we do that. There are different conditions within the contracts in terms of the premises they can go after, the affordability caps, etc. But again, with Scottish Government managing both of those contracts, we're looking to apply the levers to get the best outcome. The Scottish Government has a website at which we're sharing where we're going and what the plans are. We do this on the basis of surveys. So what might look good on paper when you go out into the areas might not be as smooth or as straightforward as planned. So we wait until Openreach have gone up and done that survey stage before we put things on the website. So this is, people can go with their own postcodes and find out, firstly, if they're in the plan. If not, there's the voucher scheme, as I mentioned, that they still utilise. And then also we'll get an indication of the timescale that they'll be served. There'll be factors that can change that, whether that's, as say, way leaves, I've given the example, condition of the existing infrastructure, the topography, the accessibility of the supply chain to get to the island, etc. And Robert will come on to some of those challenges, but we look to keep that as update as we can once we've put that information out there. I think that's really important because we only get, going back to the benefits, we only get those benefits if people sign up. This is one part of the activity, which is the build, but the next part is actually getting people to sign up to packages and to be using it as well and get some of those benefits both in the short and long term. Now hand over to Robert. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and again, just to echo Sarah's welcome, thanks for inviting us along and allowing us to give you a brief update on broadband rollout. I know it's been quite a contentious subject for a number of years, but we're now excited to be started. And we have a lot of work over the next few years to deliver across the island groups, and we're quite excited about the work that we've already started and will continue to do. Just to give you a little flavour of where we are today in relation to Western Isles coverage, because every local authority, whether you're in Scotland or the rest of the UK, tends to compare themselves on statistics and where you are in the sort of pecking order ultimately. And as you stand today, there's around 15% coverage of full fibre across the Western Isles today, which is well below the overall average in Scotland, which sits well above 60% at the moment. But the case here is that Stornoway is the only town that's deemed commercially built, and all of the subsidy requirements for the Western Isles is what will drive the sort of take-up level as well as build level across the coming years. Around 2.3k, so over 2,000 homes already have access to full fibre, and just short of half of them have actually already upgraded to the new services that's available. So that shows you there is actually a pent-up demand for full fibre and what that brings. And from a programme point of view, as Sarah outlines, there's 2 contracts really in play. But from a headline point of view, more than 10,000 premises now are in our scope for delivery over the next few years, with quite specific targeted focus happening over the next few months. And you may have already seen some of our engineers out and about in some of your communities today, and we'll pick up maybe on questions around some of that decision making and clarity around where we've been building. Positively, the first premises from the Project Gigabit programme are now live, and for those connected to the back area, communities are able to start ordering services today, and there's expectation of more build and more premises being live in the next few weeks, just to give you a flavour of locale. But just more generally, this is a long-term programme of build, and although we are looking to try and mobilise quickly and get the first customers connected, we've got a long-term plan of execution to work through. And as I say, what we're in build at the moment is there's areas, what we call, all of the work we discuss is an exchange area. So I know within an exchange area, there could be countless villages and communities, and we'll do our best to try to navigate some of those questions around those community asks. But if you bear with me around exchange areas, for us, it's easier from a context point of view, but happy to take questions that we can respond separately to if you're concerned about any specific community directly. I'd say if for those of you connected to the Timsgary area, we'll be building a spine at the moment, and it's been running from Callanish right up to Uig itself. And work on that is nearly complete, and Sarah and myself are going to be going out there this afternoon to take a look at the work that's already been started and actually speak to some locals that are actually set to benefit from some of this connectivity, which is brilliant. In terms of survey work, we've already got quite a lot of survey work ongoing across the Western Isles. And just to give you a flavour, we're looking at Lewis, which predominantly is the larger island, but we're also going into Barra. But then there's other work coming in the other island chains as we move forward through the build plan. And as I say, where you're likely to see us building through this year is in Garebost. within back. We obviously will be in the Timsbury area, and we're looking hopefully later in the year to be started in a number of areas like Shawbost, Portness and Barvis, just by example. I'm made aware of lots of other priority locations that we've got to consider, and again, really keen to hear and listen to whether there are other priority locations that we need to build to. Our job for both the UK and Scottish Government is to maximise coverage and reach and start delivering on the programme, but happy to take feedback and determine whether there's things we can review in the programme or bring forward and change around. A good example of that is Timsbury, where it was at the back end of the programme and we've brought it towards the front because of one, opportunity, but two, there was significant feedback around the importance of that area, and we were able to work that around to balance the needs of the community that we were really quite pleased about. Just a quickie in terms of the work that it takes, but I'm not going to go through the detail in it, it's in the pack, but just to give you a flavour, build usually can take anywhere between 12 and 18 months from the starting of a survey process right through to delivery. And the questions we get is around, well, I've seen some engineers that are here, but what's going to happen next? So it's just that timeline and in terms of the amount of activities that we do. And we work very closely with your roads and planning team around the noticing and the requirements, and really positive feedback around the engagement on both sides. I was speaking to our contracted colleagues at Cersei this morning, and they've had really positive feedback around the discussions and the progress they've been making. And it is a partnership to delivery. We recognise that a civil build programme of this scale will create sometimes inconvenience and will create challenges on both sides to deliver, but we're really quite pleased with the progress already made, and I believe that the plans for the future is really quite strong as it currently stands. In terms of call to action, the one question we always get is, I haven't got broadband yet, but every customer who is able to order, this is a brand new network being built to them. They may already have broadband today, or indeed might not have any broadband. If we deliver services, we need customers to register either interest in wanting to have it, or then book and register to order a service from a service provider. So it's quite specific. You need to order something new to be able to benefit from the services. And as I say, of the 2,300 already able to order, around just shy of 50% of those have already done so. And what we're already seeing is in some of the communities we're building in right now, there's a pent-up demand, they're desperate to order. So we're really pleased on that progress. But again, for those here, the QR code that's available on screen or indeed on our website, you can register, be kept updated, and your constituents and residents will be updated as soon as something new has happened or they can take action on it. And look, I've got a key contact slide there that's in the book. We will have local build teams here. We've got Scottish Government, UK Government and ourselves. And if you do feel the need to communicate, we're working very closely with Callum, your digital lead, who's keeping me right in terms of the communication, but equally we're going to try and channel good communication through this so that we can disseminate it across the wider council team. And I think from our point of view, we're happy to now move on to any questions with the time available.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert and Sarah. Questions? Can one of you put your light? Yeah. Callum?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much, Perry, for the presentation. It's very providential in one sense that I'm here today and you're here today, because I come from back. I'm in the Lochatua district where you're working at the present time. And may I first say that your vision is good, what you're intending to do. I'm trying to be positive, because I can see the chair coming, there's negative coming. Because but at the present time, and I've just shown my colleague here, who's the Timsbury ward councillor, my inbox is full with complaints, and I put it I put some of them into as a matter of fact, I was going up to technical services after this meeting today, not knowing that I've got the two culprits right in front of me. It's to do with the work that's been carried out at present. The work that's been carried out to put the cables in. I I'm not going to say I better watch because the press is here, but it's not to the best that it is. You say here that it's satisfactory, that the inconvenience has been satisfactory. I'll give you two or three instances. The work carried out is not the best. The manner in which it's carried out is certainly not the best. And the inconvenience, not only to householders, but it's also to the school transport. I've had complaints from parents who, when the children come to school, are coming to school through no fault of their own, they're given a late, whatever it is, they're given a letter to say to the parents that they've been late into school. And the reason for that is the hold-ups that's in the village of Back. The villages of Back, because of the work that's going on. I don't know how many lights that you pass through. They're stopping traffic from going. Now, the agreement was that this wouldn't start until, and the work wouldn't start until daylight. They're there at night times. They're working at night, in the morning, and in the evening. And you've got the traffic management there as well. So the traffic management is stopping the buses. I've reported it to the buses. The buses have said that they can't do anything because of the works that's going on the road. And the children are coming home with penalties, late penalties from the school, through no fault of their own. So I'm just saying that I would say that if they're going to Timishkari or going anywhere else, Garabust or anywhere else, beware, this is coming to you. Unless you two here will work out marvels when you're in the island and you'll actually do something for us. But we've had this for weeks, if not months, and it's very inconvenient, to be quite honest with you.
Can you keep your light on, Callum, in case you want to come back? If you had started in Newest first, you wouldn't have had all these complaints, of course. But
you'd have worse. Just wait till you get to Newest.
if you, I've got you, Angus, then Mustafa, and then Johnny, so I'll take you in that order, so you don't need to put your lights on.
Well, why don't I pick up on the first question?
I'm Callum McLean, by the way.
Good morning. Look, it's nice to start with a challenge. Okay, I'm more than happy with that. I'd rather hear it than actually not. Positively, we're going to meet the team shortly, so I'll be able to pick up with them around the queries. Maybe if you can funnel through some of those challenges. I know I've wrote some of them down, but if there's anything specific that you want us to look at, feel free to raise it with us. I'm out with the local team anyway in Cersei, and we'll feed that back. One, we recognise that any infrastructure programme can create challenges, but what you've mentioned and talked about isn't the way we would ideally have wanted it to go. So we can definitely have a look at that and understand what's happened and some of the feedback. Clearly, we are in the winter months, so daylight is limited. But if there was a commitment not to work within the daylight hours, then the team would have been looking to do that. So from our end, one, I'm sorry if it's created some inconvenience at the moment, but I'll definitely look to speak to the team and when I meet them at lunchtime to sort of feedback those concerns and work out what more we can do to sort of alleviate, one, children getting to school on time with no issues, and two, trying to minimise the inconvenience caused with traffic management that's essential for safety, just to manage the build of the network as quickly as possible. Yeah. But if you wouldn't mind feeding back after, Callum.
I'll do that. There's particularly through with road crossings. The road crossings aren't being what we would call repaired intimately. I've just got one even last Saturday, an email last Saturday to say that he works for a local company, and they wouldn't be allowed to leave the road crossings the way they're left after they've crossed. So
I think on that point, and that's an interesting one, in that we work closely with the council here in terms of the reinstatement and the tarring. So it depends on whether it's likely not finished or not, and it will come back when we get the tar. And the question is, do it local or you bring it from Oban? So we were having that same conversation in the car this morning around how we do reinstatement work in some of the other islands that will be more problematic for geography. It's a really interesting point, and it gets raised quite a lot. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Angus, you put your light. Or Sarah, did you want to add?
Yes, no, I thank you for raising it. As we've said, this is the start of the journey for Western Isles, and I think your call out there to your fellow council members is a very apt, and we need to hear those kind of things now, because if we start off the wrong foot, that is not going to, good for our position in terms of that investment, but also we want to make sure that the infrastructure that we're putting in has a good name. Again, we don't want it to be tarnished by any of that bad feeling in terms of what people have had to go through to be able to have that infrastructure investment come into play. As I say, this is all about the take up. People have got to feel invested in the deployment as much as in the take up and the end result. So I think it's important, and I'll work with Openreach and with Roberts and the supply chain team to make sure that we're learning from this, because what I wouldn't want to do is come back in 6 months' time and to be hearing the same thing. That I think is not a good result for us. There will be lumps and bumps along the way, but we need to know about them. So thanks for feeding that back.
Angus?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Angus Morrison from the Lochs ward. I can solve that problem for you if you move all the workers over to the Lochs area. You don't have that issue. Which brings me to the point I want to bring up. I don't see Lochs anywhere in the timeline of works for the whole of the Lochs area. Lochs, yeah. Covering the whole of North Lochs, Kinloch and Park. And I would like to know how you've taken the initiative of where you actually start the works and how you've decided on the areas and how you've left other areas out, given the remoteness of some of the areas which I represent and other members here as well. You mentioned the voucher schemes here earlier on. I have had an issue with the voucher scheme on the previous scheme where the rollout didn't cover the broadband to the cabinet didn't cover certain homes. They were offered the voucher scheme, but they were told if they took the voucher scheme, they would be excluded from any further developments. I'm not sure how that came about, so that's put people off going for the voucher scheme. There's also a development happening in our area just now where SSEN are putting a cable across joining two areas, the South Lochs area to the Kinloch area. There's a new cable going in there. The work's commencing just now, February. If you're putting cabling in, I suggest you maybe have a word you haven't done already with SSEN, and you might be able to use that under water cable to connect the areas. But I am concerned, and I have had quite a lot of representation from people who have actually requested to get onto full fibre. BT have told them that actually we're a long way away in our area in Lochs. I don't understand why when I see other areas getting it just now. Customers are having issues with BT at the moment. I know that's out with your gift. I personally had an issue with BT this week where I'm waiting 4 days now for a return call from them for a client. I think it's that there's the issue with BT and EE, and then there's Openreach. I think customers out there don't understand the connectivity between the three, who's who and what the main. I know Openreach is a contractor for this just now, yep. But BT are actually telling customers to go to EE at the moment. But a discussion I had with BT last week have told me, no, you stick with BT at the moment in the area you're in because EE aren't going to service you. So there's real confusion about the whole thing just now. But that's getting away from, we're digressing on your contract just now on this, but I've got genuine concerns on people who have no broadband fibre to the cabinet at the moment. And I'll make reference to two churches that are in close proximity in my own area who live stream every Sunday. If both churches are live streaming simultaneously, one drops out because they haven't got the broadband connectivity. Now, I don't know what's been done, research has been done for the areas. So that's what I would like to hear from you, why you've picked certain areas rather than other areas just now. So I'll leave it at that.
Leave your light on, Angus, in case you want to come back. Who's going to answer that?
Let me pick up. Look, a really great point, and I think it's one that we probably won't have the full answer for you today, but it's maybe one that can pick up post-meeting as well in terms of the detail and specific premises. I think strategically what we're outlining today is that there's more than 10,000 properties going to benefit from the rollout of this programme. There's a start, a middle and an end. And from our perspective, what we've been asked to do initially is maximise two things. One, maximise the coverage and reach as quickly as we're able to. So when you look at large sort of population areas like Garabos, Back, and some of those areas of Stornoway, they do fit with the principle of volume. But in the same time, we're looking at trying to connect those customers that may not have got benefit in the original Digital Scotland programme through the fibre to the cabinet that was deployed quite sort of seismic right across the Eilean group. Timsgate is one example where they didn't benefit within Digital Scotland, but we're actually building that in parallel right now. So what we'll commit is, and if there's direct feedback about those areas not being in plan, one, we need to check, are they in the plan, number one? So it could be they're in a future phase and the website will show whether or not the communities are in. If they're not, it's definitely an opportunity for us to review whether we can inject further funding, and that's a conversation that I would have with Sarah and the team at Scottish Government, or indeed UK Government, about stretching what we have to go further. And I can't comment on the exact detail of your community, but I'd be more than happy to pick it up via Callum and yourself around what we're doing and explain it a bit more detail if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. But I still am at a loss why the whole area of Lochs hasn't been considered. You talk about Garabust. I mean, the Lochs area has got a bigger population than Garabust has, and it's got a wider geographical stretch. If it's to do with cabling, there'll be more cabling involved, definitely. But to reach the people in the Lochs from the remotest areas of Park right through to North Lochs communities and the Kinloch area, which is on the main spinal road, yep. I just find, I don't understand why we've been kept away from that. And that's the problem with getting from my constituents. They're seeing work happening and they're reading of work happening in other areas, but yet we've been excluded. Yeah. And given that we've had somebody who was very, very beneficial, was the Donny Morrison, who was involved in the original R100. He lives in the Lochs area. Yeah, I find really strange that we're not in this kind of programme just now.
So,
Robert, can you put yours off and say that?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The build plan. So if I go back to kind of first principles on how we develop the build plan, it might be helpful. First, we carry out an exercise with commercial providers, looking at where they're planning to go, where their commercial footprint's going to be. Therefore, that allows us to focus on those premises that are not going to be served through commercial rollout plans, where we can put that public sector investment. This is then provided to the suppliers, and they look at their existing network infrastructure and what they can build from that, a bit like a tree, a kind of root and branch kind of exercise. And so there are efficiencies there, and so there are natural places where, as Robert says, it makes sense for that from Openreach to go to. With the two contracts and the two programmes, we're looking to leverage that so that we can go further. But what I'm here today, and this is where it's so apt in terms of what you're saying, is to go, that's all well and good from a network build and efficiency point of view. From a Scottish Government perspective, we're looking at areas where this will have a big impact. We're looking at the outcomes, not just the outputs for this. So having this insight in terms of areas, natural areas that are communities, whether for economic or social purposes, and actually working with Openreach and directing essentially them to look at those areas and what can be done. This is where it's helpful at this point in the plan. And we do work with Highlands and Islands Enterprise to engage with them about areas they're interested in getting repopulation, areas of economic interest, again, working with their strategic plans. And they give us a list of areas that are of particular focus for them in terms of a connectivity point of view. But that doesn't represent necessarily what's happening on the ground. So this is where I would invite all of you, if there's particular areas of social, economic areas that you feel are not currently getting covered, I need to know about those and hear from you, so that we can essentially ask Openreach to go back to the drawing board with the levers that we have and the parameters that we have to see what we can do.
You want to come back, Angus?
Yeah, there's three main exchanges in our ward. There's one in Lurebost, one in Laxey, and one in Graveth. So there were three, and the three of them are excluded from the whole build. And I know we've seen smaller changes here, but I know in the previous R100 rollout, when the cabinets were being built, and I would hope that isn't the case just now, that you are building on a commercial scale where cabinets go into an area, and depending on the uptake, I know that was the case the last time, depending on the uptake in a certain area, if there's a massive uptake, an additional cabinet would go in. And I know that happened in my colleague's ward in Scarpy, because I was familiar with it, where an additional cabinet went in. So I would hope that you haven't picked the larger populated areas just now, hoping for a bigger uptake to make it commercially viable, and not forgetting the poorer people in the remote areas.
Obviously, the technology we're using is completely different to what we did in Digital Scotland. This is a piece of glass going to every property. So not a cabinet, although we have technology that pushes the network out into communities. So one, our delivery is about reaching the most people possible and wanting them to either migrate existing service onto better or take broadband for the first time. I've got an awareness of some of the areas you're referencing. I'd need to look at the detailed plan. Some of those do have complexities about why they didn't go in the first original programme, but I would need to double check. You've said they're not in the plan. I need to understand if they are or not in the plan. They're just not communicated just yet. And maybe that's one that we can pick up offline, particularly. As I say, there's more than 10,000 properties set to benefit, and they're in the length and breadth of the West Isles.
Yeah, thanks for that. And finally, I hope it's not the complexities that's keeping this back.
No.
I appreciate the dialogue, and we'll have dialogue
Yeah,
with.
thank you, Angus.
Mustafa?
I think after Angus and Carl, I don't know if there is anything else left
Can you
to
speak
say.
into the mic, please?
I'm saying after Callum and Angus, I don't think there is anything left to say. So, but I was just going to ask a question about, I don't see you appearing to start with there. So, and just to explain to me, I mean, is there any material or technical difference between the two schemes, between the R100 and the gigabit, you know, in terms of benefits to the communities? And can I mean, there's also talking about, I think, the cabinet you started with and the fiber in our area. There is a black spot of maybe 12 houses when you have one line coming on one side, the other line, and 12 houses not being covered. And they're really a proximity to each other. You think can stretch one cable to whatever, you know. So the voucher scheme, I think Angus spoke about it. And also the fact that exclude, I think our people were led to believe that if you take the voucher scheme, you get excluded from in the future benefits or improvements. So they're a bit hesitant to do that, especially when, I mean, I'm talking about a community like Lochieport, where there is a main cable coming through the road, but it doesn't go into the village itself. And they can't find, you know, there is no technical really things that they could all club together and use a voucher. They've tried that with one contractor, but it wasn't successful. So is there anything we can do for that? Anything? I mean, I think the expression that you use, that it needs to be a community that's economically fit to benefit. If we use that, are we excluding communities that if we introduce the fiber, that community will be economically fit to benefit? So instead of just going for something that's already in existence. So thank you very much.
Can you leave your light on? Mustafa already has full fiber, by the way.
I do.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so I'm
He's
not
one of the
complaining
lucky
about
ones.
myself. It's about other people in the community that don't have that privilege.
No, well, obviously, and you're wanting to make sure the rest of your
Absolutely.
constituency benefits from that too.
Absolutely.
I'll kick off with the SBV point, BSBS point. I acknowledge that I didn't pick that one up earlier. Scottish Government and UK Government have a position where through the subsidy control requirements, we can't double subsidise. So currently within the programme that we have, this is about investing. R100 started off as a superfast programme. It was an extension of the superfast broadband programme. And as a result, when the voucher scheme was created, it was about you could either have it through the contract or for the voucher scheme. So that assumption is correct, and the rationale for that is the legislation that sits with Scottish Government about not putting double public investment funds into one place. What's changed, I would say, in the evolution with the voucher scheme is the technologies that's available to it. So it's a variety of, it can be the fibre to the cabinet, it can be 5G wireless capabilities as well. We've also got some satellite providers on there. And while that doesn't deliver gigabit technologies yet, and I do say yet because there is a continual evolution in relation to the technologies, that does give a high quality level of connectivity. So this is I think there is a piece for individual premises to consider the benefit of having connectivity now as opposed to waiting to see if they'll come into the contract. I would say we are pushing contract first. We're pushing fibre as far as we can go. We do, I suppose you could say, hesitate until when we put premises into that voucher scheme for exactly the reason that you've talked about. But the drive is to, for all the reasons, resilience, reliability, we're using more and more data, so there's going to be capacity side of things as well. So we're pushing that as far as we can go. It is only when we believe in working with suppliers that we don't think that we can serve through the contract and serve through a full fibre solution that we look to then put it into the voucher scheme. And then that opens it up to local suppliers who are already active in the area and providing other technologies. Fibre will only go so far, both in terms of a technical requirement, but also from a funding point of view. And I think this is where the mixture of having full fibre, but with the other technologies, because as I say, they're advancing at pace. The other piece for some of this is affordability as well. Again, we match ourselves with the voucher scheme in relation to Ofcom's views to affordability, to make sure that the actual products that are going onto our voucher scheme are classified as affordable. There's no point put something on there that people can't take up because they can't afford it. So for those constituents, I would say opportunity to go back and have a look at in terms of what the technology is being offered, the packages that are being offered. But again, we are trying to continue to push for the fibre side of things. If I move on to this second point, which was in relation to the...
Can I just say, in terms of, you said local contractors, are there any accredited contractors that, you know, in your list that people can go back to?
I could provide to the chair a list of those contractors that are operating in the Western Isles. There are other, I suppose, more national products as well that are coming up. We're seeing from the low Earth orbit satellite providers as well that they've got affordable, what you would now classified according to the Ofcom regulator, affordable products as well, with giving high level capacity and coverage as well. So I can provide those to the chair to be shared with you. Thank you. And moving on to the second point, well, actually your first point it was, which is relating to the differences between the programmes. As I mentioned, R100 started off as a superfast programme, and it was targeted at those premises that that didn't have superfast. So if you had it, if we were above 24 megs, you weren't going to get. As I say, technology moves on, as does expectation and the requirements from this infrastructure. And through the course of the R100 programme, even though it's been live going for 5 years, we moved that requirement up to gigabit. That was in line with UK government as well approach to having 99% of premises in the UK covered by gigabit technology. So now, even if you get superfast, you are in the pot for being looked at again. There are different requirements in terms of, I suppose, the amount that will be invested into certain premises. UK government are looking at a coverage basis where a lot of their premises are urban or semi-urban. They classify some of theirs as rural. They're not rural as far as we're concerned because the price per premise that they're looking at on average is nowhere near what we've seen through both Superfast and through the R100 programme. So what Scottish Government is doing is taking its funding and pushing the rollout to those premises that would usually be considered higher cost under the UK government view of things. Again, this is to address the Scottish requirements and really focus on this once in a generation opportunity to serve those premises. That is the way that we can look at whole community solutions. That's the only way, by using those levers to be looking at all those premises and utilising the funding to get the maximum output. It requires us to engage with Openreach in terms of where those are, what the costs are, and also trying to be confident in those costs, because as I say, what comes from on paper as opposed to what goes out there, but there's also efficiencies to come from that as well. It's not that we've also seen that cost go down, I would say, as we roll out and as we get through the plan. These programmes are going to currently to 2030. And so we've got the time to get the most out of the funding and the most out of the activity that's happening. So there are different levers within there. What I would also say is Scottish Government is, we want to see the benefit from the overall broadband output. Is, you know, we have a situation where we have targets, we have contract deadlines, but we're looking at the overall outcome for this. So I wouldn't say any of that kind of hampers us in terms of restricting what we can and can't do. We're looking at the opportunity, but we can only do that, I would say, because we've got that buy-in from UK Government to put Scottish Government in the driving seat in terms of how we maximise the outcome for this.
Okay, are you
No,
happy with that? I've got a number of people
measuring the
waiting.
outcome. Do you look at areas that, not deprived, but with low economic activities? Do you look at what the increase in economic activities after inputting a program, like say a village that didn't have fast broadband, and then all of a sudden small micro businesses appear just because, and that's what I'm saying. It's not just looking at existing economic activity, it's what could the program create.
Yeah. So if they, so take an example, there's already an economic activity. We would and there's a kind of business case for going into that area. That would be sitting with suppliers under their commercial rollout plans, because that's not where we see that should be taken. We work with Openreach and other providers as well to be pushing them to saying this stacks up, that you should be serving it, and it shouldn't be public sector investment going into those areas. So therefore you go into those areas which don't actually have that existing economic activity but have potential. So whether that's through regional transformation opportunities, whether that's through areas that, as say, for example, Highlands Islands have already highlighted of areas that they're wanting to focus on, whether because of depopulation issues or, as you say, the opportunities that if the gigabit fibre goes in there, that opens up X, Y, and Z. We are quite dependent on that local information to be able to target areas, and again put those to Openreach to be looking going into them and price those up. But I say that's where we need that information, that intel. You can't get that from looking at a network map or a data. So we're tying in with colleagues in Scottish Government, but also particularly with those enterprise agencies as well to be getting that more local intel.
Thank you very much. And would you look at that black spot in North Hughes for me, please?
Yep.
Yes.
I can give you the coordinate later on if you want. Thank you.
Johnny, you're next on the. No, Johnny I've got a list here, George. Sorry, Johnny.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this presentation, and I commend you for coming and putting yourselves in the firing line here today. I come from the same ward as Councillor McLean. When you say back, does that extend to Tulsa?
I believe it does, but I'll need to take some details and just check from an address map. What I'd recommend, and maybe it's one we can pick up with Callum after, is how you can maybe understand in your own areas what sort of coverage plan for the future is in play. And if it's maybe not clear enough, we'll maybe find a way to communicate that to help you a bit further. Obviously, we talk on maps about exchanges and premises, but you know your geography. Yeah. So maybe working in partnership, we can find a way for you to understand what's coming to your area. Yeah. But I'll also understand where you've got maybe some challenges around gaps that we'd be interested to try and work out. We're already working on some of them already. So I'll say yes, but we need to get the detail about exactly when.
Yeah, the problem down our way is most electricity companies are wanting us to go into smart meters, but that has to be depending on a reliable broadband connection. And we don't have that in a lot of areas. There are a few black spots. And even those that are getting a connection, it drops off quite often, and the smart meter isn't reliable then. So it'd be good if you mentioned that there were other ways of helping areas with a poor signal, Sarah, earlier on, that might enhance the signal in these areas.
George, I've got you on the list, so if you keep your light on. Yeah. Oh, there's a number of people waiting actually, so I know you've got another meeting to go to, so if you could keep your questions brief, please.
Thank you. Yeah, coming back on that point, the other technologies that I mentioned were relation to those premises. Well, let's take a starting point. There are a whole range of commercial products that are available on the market. It depends on where they're operating, back to your colleague's point about who's operating in the area, but also those that are available nationally. As I say, I'll pass on the list. Again, it depends on the user's needs in terms of what they're looking for in terms of speed, download capacity as well. So I think there are a number of options. It depends on their affordability point, who's operating in the area, and also and what their requirements are. As I say, that is changing, where who's operating in the area is not a restriction. I give the example, as I say, of low Earth orbit satellites now having coverage across Scotland and making products available at what is considered an affordable level. But there is also where that's not going to be possible to get fibre broadband. This is where the contracts come in. So there's always those options, I think, for residents in terms of, do they want a wireless technology or some alternative? What we're at Scottish Government and UK Government are pushing is, we believe in that full fibre is the way to have reliable, resilient network that supports future requirements, which we're expecting are going to be high speed, high latency, high capacity, data heavy activities within smart homes. You mentioned about smart meters, whether that's healthcare as well, personal care, and access to a whole variety of public services as well. That's what the investment is focused on deliver, but that doesn't take away, as you say, from the potentially the more immediate need and those options that people have available just now.
Thank you. Regarding the disruption, I think we should look at it as, well, being a short-term pain for long-term gain. At the end of the day, the work has to be done. As far as the school is concerned, I'm seeing Mr. MacLeod is listening. Maybe you should encourage the school not to be penalising pupils until this work is completed. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. So R100 obviously started 2018. I've just done a quick check and it looks like I might be eligible for broadband in 2028. So that's 10 years since the rollout started. I currently don't have broadband at all. So I'm still on copper, 2 to 5 meg download speeds. Just highlighting that. So the prioritisation, I live in Lochboysdale, which is one of the biggest ports in the Western Isles. My neighbours have fibre broadband. I'm classed as hard to reach because I'm 2 fields over. This is the point that Mustafa was making. Some of the terminology winds up a lot of people. So your point about the low Earth orbit satellite provision, affordable. I think I'm on the cheapest package because I had to go for the satellite broadband because there wasn't any other provision, £75 a month. I don't think that's affordable. You also touched on the economic aspects of the rollout. For many people, when we're accessing healthcare, when we have the FARA system, these are lifeline services. So basically on the economic need, I don't think is what we should be doing. I think it should be almost a utility like water and power. I think that's the way we should be considering this rollout. The final point I was going to make, it's actually about the health side of things and resilience. So when we have situations where people aren't able to access it, so the digital voice rollout, I suppose we looked to, there's a couple of events in the islands. We looked to have events in Euston Barra and we were told you can have an online. That's not good enough. I think we should be actually engaging with the community so people can come along and raise their concerns, not least because some of them aren't actually able to go online to access it because they don't have the speeds. So I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to put thank you for that feedback and those comments. Clarity on the R100 programme. The R100 programme is made up of 3 contracts and they were all procured at the same time. The tenders went out and both South and Central contract, they were awarded to Openreach. There were some matters in relation to the North contract, which covers the Western Isles, that meant that didn't proceed at the same timeline, and actually was put in place with Openreach, I think about 2021. So there has been, I suppose you could say in that timetable, a kind of shifting back in terms of the timescale for an R100 North. What it has then progressed is, as I say, going back to my kind of tree and the root and branch analogy, been building off the activity that the Superfast Broadband programme had already put in place, and the infrastructure that would already put in place for that. What we have seen last year is that the supply chain moving from some parts of Scotland into the Western Isles, and that's why we're here now, to be actually making the most of that activity on the island just now. So we don't target everywhere at the same time. There is a building on the existing investment and doing that as efficiently and effectively as we can to be able to maximise the funding and the budget that we have, and making the most of it. On the affordability point, the level of classified affordability is as set by Ofcom, which is currently sitting at £56 per month. The technologies that and the products that I mentioned have only come out in the last couple of weeks, particularly from Starlink, and they've got a 3-tier product, one of which does sit at around about a £56 per month option. I'm not saying that's therefore you can download as much as you want when we want. There are certain restrictions on that, but that is what we're seeing as sitting in that affordability threshold as set by Ofcom. So what I would say is the market is changing and moving, but I agree with your point. We wouldn't support a £75 point, and doesn't sit within the SBFS, within the voucher scheme as a supplier that's included within that. I think just on the final one about the focusing on economic, I agree that's not an area that's for purely should drive any of this activity. If I look to my own organisation and also local authorities we work closely with, providing digital public services is a key one. We're digitising everything within the Scottish Government, trying to make it all online. What's the point if then people can't access it? These things only work, again, and that's why we focus on the whole community solution. If everybody, you only get the return from that investment, and it only operates as you plan if they're all able to access that. We also focus on health as well in terms of remote services, both in terms of diagnostic and treatment as well. So apologies if that's come out. There was a focus on economic. That's not the case, and you'll see that in the R100 evaluation report that was published in November, that we look at a multitude of different impact areas which align with not only the business case for R100 but also the Scottish Government priority areas.
Okay, I've got another 3 people waiting, so I'm going to ask if you ask your questions one after the other so that we can. Ian Archie first, and can you keep it brief, please?
But 2 very brief questions. When the broadband journey started in 2018, when we started hearing about all this first, and the R100, what we were told, it was going to be an outside-in approach, and we were all asked to register for our services then. Now you're asking us to re-register, are you? And if so has this outside-in approach been dumped, and you are more kind of selective of where you want to go, because there are whole islands that aren't even mentioned in what's coming up, and that is unless you've got a list that you can share with us for future scoping. And my other question is, you mention different exchanges. For example, my ward Barra has got 2 exchanges, North Bay and Castleby. Does that mean, when you say you mentioned both, that the whole of these exchange areas are going to be covered, or is that going to be a bit selective as well?
Right, I'm going to take the other two members as well after this. So Sarah and Robert will answer your question along with the others when they come. Paul, if you put your light off, Ian.
Yeah, it's just a very simple question. It's just in this funding round, which is there any areas that are not included?
Okay, thank you, Paul. George?
Thank you, Chair. My question's already been answered.
Oh,
Thank you.
that's helpful. Thank you. Right, you. I mean, they have to go to another meeting, and they've been quite comprehensive in their coverage already. So, is it something new?
We're just saying there's no mention of Harris anywhere, and what are the plans for Harris, bearing in mind it is a fairly large population area, and hopefully certainly the bays of Harris area especially are suffering greatly. That's about to be bought hopefully by community buyout funded by the Scottish Government. So one of the areas that things are looking at is to repopulate the area and get people in, and they do need this digital link in. And I think that's paramount. And I think, okay, maybe use Lewis to sort things out this year, and then when you get all the problems ironed out, come to Harris next year.
Right, Norman, you had your light on.
Just a simple question. Timscary, are you going to do the whole of Uig, or is it, how far are you going?
Okay, there's a number of questions there, Robert.
Let's just take a few of them. Harris, yes, we will be building the Harris. I'll be honest and say it's going to be a very scary build. So that's why it's not first. So the team are already looking at it in detail, working out both how to deliver it, but equally how to work with your roads and planning, because literally it is rock. So we have to think carefully about how we get there. Building in Garibos is easier than building in Harris. And what we're having to try to do is work out how to get there and what's the most appropriate route to do it. The programme is running for a number of years, but I'm really sorry, it's not the first place you can get to with the build structure. But what I'd say is there's definitely coverage for Harris. Again, maybe tying with Callum, it seems a common discussion theme that we'll pick up around how we can communicate what is and maybe isn't going on at the moment and the rough timescales for it. The team have looked at it. It is... whether it's Drinashire or other areas, it's a bit of going to be an interesting journey, and we'll look for your help and support on that. North Bay, Castle Bay, I think the key for us is, although we're communicating those exchange areas, it doesn't necessarily mean that 100% of every single home and premise is able to get connected. But the job that myself and Sarah do is to take the funding and maximise the coverage. Invariably, we're usually delivering well in excess of 75% of those areas, but again, some areas is near complete, other areas will be a little bit less. I don't have a percentage split on that, but once we've done the survey and understand the impact and whether there's gaps, we can then look at whether we can infill those gaps, if indeed there are any. Again, I can take that one offline and communicate back details via Callum around percentages, if indeed that's required. Maybe I'll defer to Sarah in relation to areas not included. Yes, there are areas that currently are not in the plan, and we're already proactively looking at some of those. And I don't know, Sarah, if you want to give any updates on some of that.
Thank you. I'll go back to my earlier point. We only, I think, with reluctance, put premises into areas that are not going to get covered by the contracts. We are contract first. That means full fibre first, and pushing that as much as we can. With the gigabit contracts that were signed last year, that is what has opened up the opportunity to maximise that funding. We have always, through our projects, driven efficiency. That only takes you so far. But with additional funding and that additional activity that's coming through the UK government's programme, that allows us to do more. We get that, we drive Openreach to provide the solutions. They're the ones that have the expertise. That, let's just be clear, they're the ones that have been contracted to deliver this. They've got the data. They know what they're dealing with. I mean, I would take it on point if Robert says that is hard. All this activity is hard. These are the most complex builds in the whole of Europe in terms of telecoms infrastructure. But our role and my team's role is to challenge back. We've got in our team ex-Openreach employees who have come to work with us, and from other suppliers as well. So we have that knowledge to be able to challenge that back and go and ask the questions why. Because I think on both sides we want to get as much coverage as we can. It's only then, once it's been through a round of both survey and scrutiny and challenge, that then we would decide if it really sits in that pile that it wouldn't get served. And only then would we then look to put it in the voucher scheme, which I say is a viable option for connectivity in terms of a need now. But again, we're always trying to push to support that longer term view.
Okay, I think Robert and Sarah, thank you very much. Colin beside me will take note of anything that's not been raised so far, and we'll expect you back at some point in the near future to, but we'll give you a longer time this next time.
Yeah.
So any of you have got any kind of issues, just raise them with Colin, who'll raise them with Sarah and Robert. You're happy with that?
Yep, very much, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Warren,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
We'll see you later anyway, but yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Gleida, Woshish Nesh, but Cusper Cool, Gul, Gul and Carapatan Yalan, Rianach Hunnerst. Tashbenugla Calmac, Bevalum Falchuche, Master Davy Hamel, Agus, Master Willens for Calmac, Hun Hunjushot and Homety, Master Hamelet, the horse Shechet, Tashbenug, it Carapatan Yalan, Gan Gulten, Seichen, Calmac. Martin David, come out you.
Martin Vauston, Haguma, Kimara Hashib. It's not coming through. Can you hear me?
We're going to have to leave and come back in, David.
Okay. Can you hear me, Will? Yeah.
Yeah, I can, David. Yep.
Must be the room.
Are you hearing us now, David?
I am. Yes, I always was.
Yeah. Oh, Martin, we weren't hearing you though.
Yes, I think that's the problem. No, still here. Still here. How are you? How's everybody there?
Aye, yeah. We're all full of broadband now, David. Right. Now we're waiting for EVs on ferries. Are you doing the presentation, or is Will doing it?
I'm not. I'm going to pass over to Will, and I understand you guys have got the slides, so if you could present them, that would be very good. I'll let Will introduce himself and then take us through the slide pack, and there'll be space at the end for any questions.
Okay, I think you have to leave at 11.
I'm okay.
No,
I'm okay. I've got that sorted out.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we're hearing you, Will. Yep.
Excellent. Right. Thank you. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to work. I'm hoping that the animations are off. Otherwise, we have to go clicking through the slide pack a bit. So I understand you'd like a brief overview of the carriage of electric vehicles that might stimulate some questions and discussions. So perhaps we start with the first slide here. We'll start with the myth-busting side of it, which I'm sure many people are probably aware of. So we have a little list here of them. The first thing is that EVs are prone to thermal runaway, and by that we mean that the battery goes into combustion itself and propagates its own fire within the battery cells themselves as a chain reaction. That's what most people think of when they think of EV fires, is a thermal runaway. process. There was a myth that EV fires can't be extinguished conventionally. There's one that they're hotter and more toxic. There's one that the deck under the EVs will melt because of the extreme heat, and vehicles will fall through to the spaces beneath, or the ship suffers a structural failure. Explosions more likely with EV fires. EVs cause stability problems, and EVs just in general are dangerous. So these are some of the comments that are out there about EVs, and they some are false, some have some basis in fact, but there's a lot of myth about the whole thing. So if we could proceed to the next slide, please. These are some statistics, and they may not be right up to the minute accurate, but they give you a good proportionate flavor. And the little diagram and stats there come from a group called EV FireSafe in Australia, and they've been collating a lot of data for a number of years. So this study is from 2010 up to, this one looks to be up to about 2023 at latest, but possibly slightly earlier. The figures haven't changed much in the most recent times. So the statistics from Australia, Sweden, and USA show there are different statistics depending on who's measuring them and how. But an EV itself is 20 to 60 times less likely to go on fire than a conventional petrol or diesel vehicle. And the figures at the top are overall the number of verified EV fires worldwide. I think that total now is up to about 511 of all the millions that are out there. So this is quite an emerging topic. So the trends and the statistics themselves are emerging worldwide. So it can be a little bit difficult to collect the picture, but wherever you look, we are getting the same picture, that there are not so many of these fires as you possibly might be led to believe. So if we come to the next slide, please. Yeah, nice dramatic picture here. The risk of carrying electric vehicles, overall the fire risk is considered by industry, or by most in the industry, by regulators, by the IMO, to be relatively low. That's a statistical fact. Ro-ro vessels, such as the ones that we operate, are well equipped to deal with vehicle fires in any case. We have drencher systems, water curtains, the fog lances, foam applications, and I'll come on to later on some of the specialist gear that we've now got on board as well. But it is fair to say that EVs and hybrids too, when I say EVs, we're talking about hybrids as well, anything with a sizable kind of battery in it, which increasingly more and more cars are making use of. Anything with a lithium-ion battery in it for traction or support the engine. They do have particular hazards. They don't all match up with the myths that we talked about earlier, but they can emit or do emit toxic gases and substances during a fire or pre-fire when the battery's heating up and they're venting off. Those are quite explosive and toxic. They do produce jet flames, which are flames that shoot out from the side and underneath the vehicle in a horizontal fashion. They do produce those at a stage of combustion, not continually throughout. You can get a vapor cloud explosion if the gases aren't controlled. They can explode, which is very similar to a fire in a house or anywhere else. Often fires that evolve from, gases that evolve from fires are toxic and explosive. And if they're not controlled, they can explode. There is intense heat and smoke production from them. That heat probably peaks a bit earlier than in a conventional fire, but is not greater overall. But it is intense, but the same can be said of many other fires. The water that comes off the firefighting is toxic because it contains chemicals and so on from the batteries and from the vehicles themselves, which again is the same as anything modern that you burn. But there are some real nasties in there. That's true. And for that reason, the firefighting suits and so on have to be decontaminated after firefighting. Probably one of the things that is true and leads to a lot of concern is the fact that these lithium-ion batteries, if they do go into a proper thermal runaway, and bearing in mind not all vehicle fires will be thermal runaway, in fact very few of them are, but if that battery starts to feed off itself, very, very difficult to extinguish, and they can appear to be out and then reignite sometime later. That is true, and that has been the experience of fire services around the world. And the other thing that perhaps isn't thought about so much because it's not so spectacular or newsworthy is the fact they are just heavy, and so that can have an effect on stowage and how many you can carry in certain places, such as mezzanine decks and the like, just because they are heavier than a conventional car. I do have to say cars are getting heavier and bigger, so I don't have to tell you what it's like sometimes being stowed on the deck of our ships where the cars are bigger than they used to be, and how tight that can get at times. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so to counter those myths and taking into account all the facts that we know, this is how we come to our position on carriage of these vehicles. We accept they are less likely to catch fire than a conventional vehicle. The percentages are very small, in fact, and worldwide, the FireSafe study has shown there to have been 511 cases now. I've just got the latest figure there in front of me, and 20 of those involved explosions of all the millions of cars out there. About 90 of them were associated with either during charging or just after charging the vehicle. But they are less likely than your conventional petrol and diesel vehicles, and the fires we've had in recent times have been things like camper van fridges going on fire within a camper van where the electrics have been left on or the gas have been left on, or vehicles that come and park up in the marshalling lanes. They have a problem, like a fuel leak or something, and they go on fire in the marshalling lanes. So it certainly can happen with conventional vehicles as well. The modern battery systems are pretty good at controlling overheating events and defects, and they're getting increasingly so as well. So there are advanced safety systems in the vehicles. Most EV fires around the world don't actually involve a true thermal runaway. It's a fire started somewhere else in the vehicle by dodgy electrics or other causes. It just happens to be, and it's an electric vehicle, but it's not a thermal runaway. They don't release more energy when they burn overall, but there is a peak, and they do have jet flames and the like, and so they require a slightly different approach. And this is a biggie because we have plenty of it. Water is a very effective coolant and method to contain a vehicle fire, and it will prevent and extinguish secondary fires, and it will contain an EV vehicle fire until we can get to a place of refuge as well. There are some myths around that seawater is not a good firefighting medium, that it causes explosions and so on, but there is no evidence of that whatsoever, because a lithium-ion battery is not the same as a lithium substance. Lithium reacts violently with water, but lithium-ion it's not necessarily. So forget anything you've heard about seawater not being good for this. It has proven to be. Water also contains the gases as well. It dampens down gases. That's a standard firefighting technique. And jet flames, yes, are an issue for us that we take into account in our preparations. But on the flip side, if you have a fire in a conventional vehicle and the gas tank erupts, then you'll have pooling, burning fuel spreading around the car deck under other fires. At least with EVs, you don't have that particular issue. I wouldn't call that a benefit, but it's just a fact that you don't have that to deal with. Yeah. We can have the next slide, please. Yeah. So Our mitigations here, in keeping with how we treat all vehicles, they are inspected pre-boarding and looked at for damages, and we have declined to carry vehicles when they're damaged. We have particular procedures for that. They turn into dangerous goods if they're damaged in a certain way, and they require clearance from accredited technicians before they can be shipped. So we have a process for that. We don't put them on the MES decks if we have space on the main deck, but at the same time, we're not going to turn anyone away on the basis that they have an EV that we can't fit on the MES deck. We'll put them on the main deck. The reason we don't put them on the MES deck is because they're heavier. So on all ships with MES decks, you can't necessarily have a deck full of EVs because it's too heavy for the deck. So it's just not efficient to put them up there. They're better to be on the main deck. But the MES decks are fitted with the same firefighting, fixed firefighting systems that the main decks have as well. We do currently keep them away from strategic points on the vehicle deck if we can, if we know that they're an EV, and I'll come on to that a bit in a minute. We do keep them away a bit from strategic points, simply because if you did have a thermal runaway, you know that you won't be extinguishing that fire on passage, so I'd rather keep them away from strategic points. But those strategic points are also covered by fixed firefighting and firefighting systems, and so it's not the end of the world if you do have to put them there. And because it's difficult to identify them, we just don't know either necessarily whether when cars roll on, whether they are EVs or not. And the other point there is, in the future, there will all be EVs of some kind or alternative fuel vehicles, and we will continue to carry them and mitigate the risks. We do provide specific firefighting advice through our company management system with training and drills. We are looking at the moment into more advanced training for our staff. One of the problems is that there is no internationally recognized, no IMO approved, SCCW approved firefighting course yet for lithium ion batteries or electric vehicles. It's coming, but the IMO moves at a very slow pace. So in the meantime, we're working with other companies looking at people that can offer something reputable and fit for purpose for us, even though we may then later, in a few years' time, have to retrain people again. We do recognize that specialist training is a good thing to have. We also carry special equipment. We have undercar drenches and fire blankets. Again, this stuff is not approved at the international level, so we have to be careful in the selection of it, that we're not selecting something that isn't fit for purpose. But we do now have undercar drenches. I'll show you in another slide. Batteries are not removed from vehicles. They travel with the vehicle hooked up to the battery management system. If in the case of a damaged one, they were shipped, they'd be shipped as a dangerous good, and all the requirements of the RMDG code would apply there. The portable equipment, they are a higher risk factor than cars. This is things like e-bikes and the like that you can buy off the internet. They're not necessarily well made. We consider them to pose a higher risk, actually, in terms of having battery problems, and they have to be stowed on weather decks for that purpose. They're not allowed in the accommodation. The exceptions are for wheelchairs and mobility aids that are permitted in car decks, but the hoverboards and segways and the like are not. We have fire patrols, CCTV, smoke detectors on passage. We've always had them. That falls under the same category as your normal fire prevention techniques. We, in conjunction, or like other operators like Stena, we will keep them away from DGs proportionate to the type of DG that it is, in the same way that we would do for other vehicles. And it depends also on deck space. But the industry does not believe wholly that there is any particular cause to park them anywhere else and to segregate them away from dangerous goods. The overall picture I hope I'm giving you here is that the industry is very aware of the risks and is taking steps to mitigate, but EVs are not in the main viewed as something to be particularly fearful of. We're gaining understanding of them, I would say, and able to take a proportionate response to them. So the next slide, please. Now this is our equipment. We have upgraded the fire suits. They allow for better protection from the smoke that's produced and water resistance as well, because there'll be a lot of water around if we're dealing with an EV car. So we've upgraded those suits to beyond the SOLAS requirement, and these undercar drenches that allow us to position them under a vehicle from a safe distance and drench the car from below. The standard methodology is, as soon as you even suspect an EV fire is developing, or any fire on the car deck, is to engage the drencher systems and fix firefighting and deluge of vehicles. And then, if safe to do so, we would put these undercar drenches underneath as well. We also carry massive fire blankets now, which are not to be used when a fire is fully developed, but they can be used for effective protection of other vehicles or in a non-thermal runaway situation. But you are better not to have the fire blanket on if it's going to be a fully developed fire, because the fire blanket stops the drenches from working. It can trap explosive gases. So there's certain judgments have to be made in the use of those. But certainly we have different tools in our bag now that we didn't have a few years ago for carriage of EVs. So we have the next slide, please. This is really the summary one, as I'm aware we're a little bit time bound maybe. What I would say is the legislation is catching up with industry. So industry has been developing electric vehicles, alternative fuel vehicles, and sending them to transport operators. And we've been playing catch up. And when I say we, I don't mean Calmac. Calmac's actually quite well involved and at the forefront of this in the UK. But internationally, it's the frameworks are definitely playing catch up here. So we're involved very heavily with the UK Chamber of Shipping, and we were in previous years. We're currently, this activity has been reinitiated, and we're reviewing the current state of play with electric vehicles. What has changed? What's coming next? What can we all do as operators? And we cooperate with other UK operators here to develop guidelines. And we had the benefit of the MCA being involved in the working groups that then published the industry guidance, which is that MGN 653 and stuff from the European Maritime Safety Agency that is woven into our own protocols. So we continue to be at the front of this and comparing with other operators as well, and making best use of some big projects that have been running for a number of years on fire safety for RoRos, not just for EVs, but for cardiac safety in general. We research all this very carefully, and we come to a consolidated position with other operators, so that we're not drawn off into following the latest trend here, because there's certainly plenty. If you look on the internet, there's plenty of information around. It's not all good information, and we are after providing a proportionate service that gets people from A to B and recognises that EVs and the like are here to stay. So our public perception is a bit of a challenge. We are regularly asked for comments on electric vehicles and why on earth do we still carry them when other operators have banned them. But in fact, there are very few operators that have, and I would say they're not the same type of operator that we are. And an example as well is, if you want to compare a car carrier, for example, to a ferry, they're quite different beasts. There, where the car carrier does not have the deluge systems, their stability won't take that, and they're not fitted with it. They have CO2 systems that are not effective against these type of fires. So we have to be very careful comparing other operators with our own. So yeah, we balance, we think, the actual risk against the perception, and we will deal with the additional weight factor on a case-by-case basis, which is a pretty small issue for us at the moment. It hasn't really bitten yet, but we are mindful of that at the same time. And that is probably the largest day-to-day thing that we may have to deal with is, how do we get the best stow out of the mezzanine deck to get our customers from place to place. And the other ones, the fire risks and so on, are much lower ones that we are ready to deal with. It's the same as any other vehicle fire. So that's the end of the monologue. I hope that made some kind of sense to you as what you were looking for, and more than happy to field questions, comments, things to take away.
Yeah, thanks very much, Will. That was a very comprehensive coverage of the issues, I would say. Kirsten, any questions from any members? Ronald?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Will, for that presentation. Just a quick question. Does CalMac offer guidance to electric vehicle drivers relating to what the state of charge should be on their vehicles when transported on your ferries?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We don't particularly do that at the current time, but I would say this is coming in the next tranche of developments. You're going to see a lot more of that on our websites, and what we're looking at internally and externally through the working group is end-to-end process here, from the customer messaging, the booking, through to safe discharge of the vehicle. I think that piece needs further development. What we don't want to do and don't see the need for currently is a need to disproportionately inconvenience people or make the customer's life harder to get from A to B. So whatever we do will be based in evidence and careful assessment. But yeah, you can expect to see further guidance, but I hesitate to say that would be an absolute rule of you must present with your state of charge within this. But we'll absolutely look at that in the next iteration. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Will. Yes, Chair, I do note some European roll-on, roll-off ferry companies do offer such guidance at this present time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ronald. Penyach?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation. Very enlightening and encouraging, and no less than we would have expected from CalMac to have all the safety features in place. So just pleased to see that. One concern I do have, and it's not the fire issue, but the weight issue, especially with mezzanine decks, and it's probably more David than yourself will answer this one. Are there plans to strengthen the hoists on the mezzanine decks to ensure that this issue is being dealt with? Because we've had quite a number of issues, certainly with the Hebrides mezzanine deck has been out a number of times, and my understanding is to do with the mechanism that hoists it up, not the deck itself, but actually the means of lifting it and lowering it. And I know that there's going to be a longer delay in the refit this year because of some of the issues. Will that include strengthening the ability of the mezzanine decks to lift with the additional weight of electric cars? And we are looking at seeing more and more electric vehicles coming here. The proposal to have more charging points, making more encouraging for electric vehicles to come here, is going to be a growing problem. So it's better to get it dealt with early rather than having to run with half-empty mess decks, because the vehicles are so big they don't fit there and they're too heavy to go up there anyway.
David, is a question on mess decks for you?
Yeah, sure. So when the Hebrides is away on our dry dock, I don't believe the intention is to strengthen the mess decks, is to get them back to where they were with the pulleys and the wires. We are quite careful about how we manage traffic, particularly in Harris, as you're talking about as well. There have been occasions where we have, and we are continually monitoring the situation with how many electric and hybrid vehicles turn up, and we're getting better and better at making sure that they are presented to the vessel in the right order so that they stay on the non-mezzanine decks. It's something that will continue to change across the landscape of the entire network, and some of the vessels where we have plenty of room and maybe stronger mezzanine decks like the new ones coming in, the Glensadachs and the likes, it won't cause as big a problem as it may with hire cars. In particular, there's a lot of hire cars now that are hybrid and electric, and we're seeing a lot more hire cars on the roads in the Western Isles as well. So it's something that we need to keep an eye on. It's not something that within this current cycle of overhauls that we're going to be doing any strengthening on the Mestic.
So effectively, we're going to have to look at continuing limits and restrictions on the amount of vehicles that will be carried on the Heb this summer, then, especially at peak times when, as you say, more and more cars are coming that can't go on the Mestic. And if the conventional vehicles that are there are vans or pickups that are too heavy to go up there, then you're going to have to run with fewer vehicles with probably a half-empty Mestic.
I wouldn't say it'd be a half-empty Mestic, because we do still get plenty of internal combustion engine cars that are able to go up on the Mestic, and it's not, unfortunately, that's the way the puzzle's presenting itself to us, is that we need to move these cars onto the Mestic more often than we may have had to before with the presentation of electric cars, but it's not yet got to the stage where we're able to evidence it enough to upgrade those wires. And to be honest, I don't even know if the upgrade of the Mestic would be even possible. I would need to seek technical guidance on that.
You want to come back, Kenya? You happy-ish with that?
No, but we'll leave it at that.
You'll have a new ferry shortly anyway, so.
Well, we hope so. And that the Mestics there are strong enough to take EVs.
Yeah. So you're telling us the new ferries will have stronger Mestics, David, are you?
I've sought that information before, and I don't know if I've had it or not, but let me get back to you with how much stronger the Mestics are on the new vessels.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you could
okay?
Relate that back, yeah. Any further questions on EVs, anybody? John Orman?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It's more, again, a question of weight. In years to come, when there are a lot more electric vehicles, is this going to restrict the amount of vehicles that a ferry can carry?
David?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that potentially it could. We've got the new vessels coming in, and I'll get that action back to you. The vessels are bigger, more car carrying capacity, and there will be 2 of them. So I know that in the likes of the Little Minch services, we're going to be increasing capacity on regular car decks, never mind the inclusion of the mez decks. But as Will's alluded to, it's a much changing situation, and the numbers, if you look at the numbers of cars that are coming on the market now and replacing combustion engine cars, then absolutely it will be a problem we need to solve at some point.
Yeah, well, Paul, leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies if I missed this in the presentation. It was very detailed. But one question I had was in terms of electric vehicles on the islands, if they're involved in accidents and they have to be transported to the mainland for repairs. Obviously they're at a higher risk of there being an incident with the battery. Again, apologies if I missed it in the presentation, but just some thoughts on that.
You want to answer that one, Will?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Yeah, it was buried in the presentation, but I was going at a fair clip with that. So in the case that the vehicle's damaged, in our opinion, that the battery management system or the battery could be affected, then it's a matter of having the vehicle examined by a TechSafe technician. So it doesn't have to be Superman that comes and looks at it, but just someone who's competent in a number of ways that we can consider someone competent. And then the vehicle can be declared safe for travel. It may be shipped as a dangerous good, but that's okay. That doesn't, we carry DGs all the time. It doesn't preclude it from travel. So a vehicle should it's not highly likely that a vehicle will be stranded in the islands. And in my experience, insurance companies also get involved at this point in the recovery. So then you have all the expertise and the resources of the insurance company to get the vehicle back as well. Yeah, so there is a process to go through, and it has been working effectively thus far, and I'm sure we'll get smoother at it as well as we go through. I hope that answers.
Yeah, he's happy with that. Susan?
Thank you, Stu. Thanks for that. Well, that was really interesting. So I guess I have to declare an interest because I am an EV driver. Are the safety improvements that you've been talking about, do you feel that the automotive industry is just kind of leaving that to people like yourselves to manage, or are you aware of improvements being made within the automotive industry round about the safety of EVs?
Will?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Susan, for the question. I think it's a case of the vehicle manufacturers are interested in selling motor cars, but they're also interested in them being as safe as possible to avoid scandal and so that they build a good reputation. So I think by proxy, they're building safer and safer cars, but there's not a lot of evidence that they've thought about the sea transport phase as part of that. But I think in general, they are making them safer and safer, is the way all car manufacturers do, as a matter of competition with each other and to get that market share. But it's almost as if it's a newish technology that's just kind of landed on us, that industry and the regulators are kind of running to catch up on. Yeah, which I hope answers that.
You happy with that response, Susan?
Absolutely. And just one other very quick question. You mentioned in your presentation about not charging during passage. Is that because the fires are more likely to happen at that point than when they're not charging?
Not necessarily. It is a risk factor. There are different things that can go wrong, and the fire safe statistics indicate that fires that are somehow related to charging are probably one of the main causes. But for us, it's also a case of the carbon footprint. So if you imagine we're burning fossil fuel to drive the generators, to drive the electricity, to power an electric vehicle, whereas it'd be better for that to be from a sustainable source ashore. So that really is almost in our mind that it's just not efficient. We're trying to reduce carbon emissions the whole time and do our bit there as well. So that's the main reason. But certainly there are risk factors with charging, and that's why we don't allow people to charge the e-bikes and so on board as well, because the risk kind of goes up with them. But it's really primarily an environmental one, but the fire safety part is also there. But
thanks, Will. I'm delighted to hear that it's an environmental concern more than anything else, because I think there would be a lot of pressure to allow people to charge. I mean, it's an ideal time to charge your car, but just that consideration that you've got, that it's the wrong way to be charging an electric vehicle using fossil fuels. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Mustafa?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. It was just following from what John Norman said there in terms of reduction to capacity in the future. Obviously, that's going to affect everything that goes through. Are we anticipating that by increasing the timetable and giving us 4 journeys?
David, Mustafa's organising change of timetables. Okay.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, Mustafa. Are we going to put in more time for more sailings for electric cars? I'm not going to commit. I'm not going to commit to that, Mustafa. I'll leave that in the open just now.
Okay.
But yes, as I've said, it's a problem that's that's growing, and it's a problem that's not at its a critical mass yet. We are still able to manage the vehicles coming in, and as we develop, one of the favourite subjects I talk about when I come on these meetings is a rebooking system, and as we develop a rebooking system, we'll get to a point where we are able to, and I believe we're getting there really quickly actually, we're able to identify through the registration lookup what the fuel type of the car is, and the fuel type will allow us to only take so many bookings with electric vehicles as a fuel type, and that would allow us to manage the space on the vessel more effectively, because the last thing we want is that surprise electric vehicles turn up and knock off people's bookings. People that have booked it to travel can't travel. So we are taking the problem seriously. It's not, the majority of cars on the road are still petrol and diesel cars, and the majority of cars on our vessels are still petrol and diesel cars. So that is something that we'll continue to tweak through process and through system to make manageable.
Thanks. Just to keep you on your toes, that's
Yeah.
it, David.
Oh,
So
always.
Thank you very much. Okay.
He's not going to give you a 24-hour service at all, by the looks of it.
Oh, you never know.
Well, this is my last one, Nustin. This is my last 3 weeks in the job, so it's the best time to ask.
Okay, anybody else? Any questions for David or Will? No? Anyway, thanks, David, and thank you, Will, and I'm sure we'll see you in another role soon, David.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions just in general?
Don't encourage any more questions, please.
Okay, Doc. If there are, you know where to find me.
Yeah. Okay. Wil pwyl y gyndig yn dasben ei orsbanier. Nest am mi for goedem oamesig doen die rigel jeson brik bik de garston hoerig. Dus je tolle te lussen zijn. Ga ik dikkelum kunnen jen, zo. Ashley Cusperacia schema camach emissions and riach unichte. En als je ziet gaal, die flikkers naar koorle, die Comhairle schema uterus camach emission and riach unichte. Het boei tarin mach voor geivren zuur schul aar is keld runjal. Van geen la zo'n flikkers te stuur strijd naar committee en nugela die kan doelig dan willen geskokerig. Bini Linda Hannigan die Chanage is flikti I Kisten Sambi. Linda?
Chair, the only update I have is Scottish Government have published a consultation on the 29th of January regarding delivering Scotland's air departure tax, and we hope to bring a draft response to that consultation to the next committee for members' consideration. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Tappelet Linda. Kisten ik ten je bit Linda, mijn huspershaw. En hier wil poeilijk kundig is er wel ik 3 punten hun. Ja, kleva. Kusper Sheikh, opperkel aan alappe, alten kool stichte. En als je ziet je kaal je stickers naar kool, je kist voor committee kozen alappe naar parlement naar licht unigte. Kuchante die op het kaal aan een alappe. Alten kool stichte. Van geen laarsen fikkersten en je volkelaar gaan nodig, dan willen ergens Siar herricht. Bini Linda Hannigan die Chanage ergens fiktie I Kisten Sambi. Linda, eerst.
Thank you, Chair. The only update I have on this is the Scottish Government's recently announced Ireland's Accelerated Fund in the 26-27 draft budget, and both fixed links could be considered, could be candidates for inclusion in this fund. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Kisten, ik tennis bij, maar aan jou. En ga ik. Kuba dosher. Ik. Kuba solo secretary, ik ook geluto hele Ashley Kish.
Tapelish and Shem.
I was kumne Kisten kuje.
Kumi. I know I come back. Thank you for that, Linda. Thank you for that. I'm really pleased to see that the focus is on links within the islands rather than to the mainland. I think that's the more positive way, and I think it's more important, and that we learn from our neighbours further north, where they have worked at linking their island communities, and that those links have brought huge economic benefit to the communities that have been linked, enabling people to live in those communities and still travel to work in the likes of Tórshavn, but go back to Strender and Sandoy, which is now only 20 minutes away rather than the usual 2 hours or ferry link away. So I think it's a positive thing that we need to be pushing and encouraging, that we link our islands to open up the economic and cultural benefits that we're able to get by travelling up and down the island chain without restriction.
So, Harokesh de shit dit, han ook het thuis. Ja. We zijn kerst. Harokesh dit, ja. Ja. Dennis Biele. Oh, Callum.
Yes, Chair. I think we're missing out on not thinking about a fixed link to the mainland. That is a tunnel. Kenny summed it up there. Some of the islands are 2 hours distance between one another within Faroes, and they're linked. We cannot compare Faroe to ourselves in that sense. We can within the inter-island, what his argument is. But if Faroe were trying to link to Denmark, it would be an impossibility almost to put in a tunnel. But we're only 30, 40 miles out away from Skye, whatever. We should be certainly looking at some fixed link through tunnels, rather than the inconsistencies that we've had over the years. And is it going to be any better after what we heard today, when Caledonia McBrain haven't even planned vessels to take electric vehicles? They're not even planning it. And yet we're told that in 2035, we're going to be electrified. So what I'm saying is that we're losing out and not looking into a tunnel structure to link us to mainland Scotland. I think we're letting down a future generation, to be quite honest with you.
Linda?
Thank you, Chair. The STPR2, which is the Strategic Transport Projects Review over the next 20 years, I think it is, by Transport Scotland. They went through all the options, and it was initially included as a sifted in option, but then it was sifted out on technical grounds. So they kept in the 2 inter-island fixed links as recommendations in the final report.
Transport Scotland. Are we listening to Transport Scotland? They've let us down over the years and past years, and they're continuing to let us down. If we're listening to what they're saying, and they're saying it as they're trying to be as simple as possible. In other words, restrict these outliers, these island dwellers. Never mind, don't take them any closer to us, but keep them away as far as possible. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous when we're going down that route.
Make sure you take note of that point, Linda. I think he's made some fair points, actually. Check.
Just to correct something there, the 2 hours was a 2-hour drive round through other links that was shortened to a 20-minute one. It wasn't a 2-hour ferry crossing that was replaced. It's all within there to allow their own communities, and in fact has increased the population of the islands by enabling people to move back and work in these communities. And certainly I would strongly advocate joining the islands, but certainly I think joining to the mainland would be a huge retrograde step for us as islands, and rather we push for better ferry services that would hopefully protect our culture, our heritage, and our communities from 24-hour access to all and sundry. That's my own question for you.
Wel, ha mi féin sin hula tú a hít, mi na bechgan itar jálichte bechga, columns bechga agadzach. Fé mi sin gola mach an hoirstach agus éistech I déhach go rá, mis muine son goláis sin cogúnach dáil íon ó timichaléis sin. A mi gáildis rút a column rá, a mi gáildis rút a ausgrá. A bechgan acham scuteach. Shaggy Ian.
That's brilliant. I think I can see the many benefits of having the inter-island fixed links done, but at the same time, I have worries in my head that would lead to more centralisation of services, which we've suffered badly from over the last number of years, and it's something that would need some form of guarantee that wasn't going to happen. I know you pushed for time, so I won't give my view on the tunnels to the mainland, but there is a lot of mixed reaction out there to that one.
I was famous in Cogunu and noch an sin. Johnny?
I fully agree with Councillor McLean. Probably seeing the links to the islands will be a help. People will see what's available. If we threaten them with a tunnel to the mainland, it could make them sharpen their pencils as providing us a proper ferry service. Because if you remember when the Skye Bridge was being mooted, you had one ferry from Kyle to Kyleakin, and if you weren't there by 6 o'clock and in the evening, you were there till the next morning. The minute they mentioned the Skye Bridge being built, 2 ferries appeared, and they were going back and forth like a shuttle service, and they provided a brilliant service. In fact, you probably wouldn't need a bridge to Skye had that been done in the first place. So if we can threaten them with a tunnel to the mainland, it might make them sharpen their pencils and give us a proper service that we can rely on.
I'm sure go leor durus sin as a cool gelach and have me doch an Scotland you learn is from mir Paul.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit disappointed with this because in the last term myself and previous councillor Cal McMillan pushed really hard to get this included. Initially, it wasn't actually going to be included the last time, and we managed to persuade that to get that included and to see it being taken out again. to the mainland, the link to the mainland is quite disappointing. So, and I agree with Callum as well, Callum McLean, you know.
Yeah.
I think it changes a lot. I think it's not necessarily culturally divisive, not necessarily.
Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think it was quite a lot of us last term had an interest in this, especially the mainland connection. I understand there's a call for evidence onto the Scottish Affairs Committee, and there's the STPR too. So there's a lot of thinking around that. But the mainland connection is something that we've talked about. One of the things that was mentioned last term was, are we seriously considering that in 50 years' time we'll still be looking at the CalMac updates to see which ferry's on or which ferry's off? You know, I understand people have concerns about the culture and the access to islands 24/7, but when we're looking at depopulation, a lot of that is down to people moving away because they're not able to get backwards and forwards to events that they want to get to. So we need to be, you know, I think you're right. We need to speak to the communities.
Yeah.
We had a seminar on this. We've agreed to go and do it. So I think we actually do need to go and do it. Unfortunately, this report has to obviously go back in before we're able to do this.
Yeah.
Consultation with the public, but I think we genuinely do need to do it.
Staff, can we let Mark come in first? I'm sorry to push you down the.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies that I missed the start of the debate. I was involved in another meeting. I think these points are well made. This is by no means a finalised position.
No.
And we've acknowledged in this chamber in the past that consultation is required with communities as to their own wishes and views. Yeah. And we know that these may be different on different subjects among different communities. So it may be that the committee wishes to resolve to commence that consultation and engagement formally, or you may wish another report to be submitted to you on how we would best do that. But it is absolutely an issue on which we need an extensive engagement before we can reach a finalised position. And this report sets out potential benefits, but does not set out a finalised position. I think the points made by Councillor Ian M. MacLeod are very valid. We would have to think about the consequences for services as well, and service delivery as well as just for simple, if I can call it that, connectivity. Thank you, Chair.
Staffer.
Thank you very much, Chair. And you know, I think it's yeah, most of the points were made. I just want to reinforce the point. I think that mainland connectivity, especially for future activities, for the future survival of the islands, I think it's really important, and it's something that we need to look at and discuss, and you know, obviously, and take the community's view on it. But I think I remember a long time ago when talking to a nice, fine gentleman that's no longer here from Sculpey, that was really worried being invaded by this joyraider from Stornoway when the bridge gets opened. So I don't think the culture in Sculpey has changed much since then. So okay, thank you.
Thanks for letting me in again, Chair. I don't agree with this premise that it'll affect culture and it'll affect. It's affecting family life at the present, that we cannot get to our children and our children's children on the mainland. Some of us have got families on the mainland, and we could easily visit them for a weekend if we had fixed link tunnels. They cannot come to us. Some of them have got 3, 4, 5 of a family. It's costing them a fortune to come up here, whether they come by boat and they can't fly, because that's exorbitant. It's easier for them to go to Canada for a fortnight than just here for a week. So the whole thing about it is the system hasn't been working for decades, and it will not work for decades to come the way we are up in these islands. And it's having a detrimental effect upon our young people staying here. I don't go along with this. If they're connected to the mainland, they can easily come home, and they can work at home for a week, and they can come home at the weekends. And we're hemorrhaging our young people at the moment, and we're saying we'll carry on as before. It's got to be looked at. And I'm sorry that this hasn't got this in this paper, hasn't got that in at all. If we're carrying on listening, as I said, I was going to say to high trans, but I better keep that out of it, since you mentioned there, Chair, but especially to Transport Scotland and to such like, then we're going to go down a tunnel that there's no escaping from. I'm sorry for that. I have to say that this tunnel structure would do something, as it's done to the Faroes.
Susan?
Thanks, Chair. I think the evidence is the most important thing. Even just amongst this discussion, there are two diametrically opposed views about whether we want tunnels or not. But the idea that a body of water is going to protect us from, in the words, all and sundry, the internet already did that. Our children are in their own bedrooms and the world has access to them. So the idea that a body of water is protecting them is a fallacy. But I think we need to decide what our view is and what the view of our communities are. So that's why I'd be really pushing for some sort of consultation so that we can have a definite answer when we're asked the question, do you want tunnels connecting to the mainland or not? And then we're all fighting on the same side. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Susan. Kenneth?
Hi.
Kenneth?
Hi there. Sorry, I didn't realise my hand was still up. What I was going to say was said by Ian McLeod. On a personal level, for me to support this, I would need to see an ironclad commitment in writing and enforceable from the government that services wouldn't be stripped from the peripheries, which is already happening. But I suspect that the tunnels would, throw fuel onto the fire. Something that some people have mentioned to me in the community. I don't know if it's valid or not. A lot of people are employed by Calmac here. I don't just mean specifically Barra, I mean in the islands in general. So you'd be looking at job losses there. Equally, maybe openings up would generate other jobs. I don't know. It's just a general comment. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Gordon?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really hugely important debate to be had, but I wanted to reiterate what a few of my councillor colleagues have said, that do we need a formal recommendation to this paper to start the consultation process, as I think was alluded to by the Chief Executive, to move things on? That be correct?
Yes, I think that would be helpful, Chair, if that's the wish of the committee. What I would suggest, given the closeness of this committee to the March series, is that a report is submitted to the March series on how and in what form and to what extent that consultation would begin, because it is quite a complex consultation, I would suggest. So perhaps that brief period would be useful for us to discuss how best we do that. But it would be helpful to have authority to submit that report and begin that consultation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we should talk to it. Gordon?
Would that be an additional recommendation to the report?
Can we add that?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Ieder faculty rioch waar mag het kial de kismoor agus waar mag de hortussen laat skiën nog kruiska agus duschen je moet kial de water na hedig agus uisten hasig we schon maar wat doen je voor de gaan natuurlijk jullie kial de janu de kismoor je moet dat wel toen je laat skiën nog reed we zijn was je kunt de tunnel de janu je moet niet al de levier de janu en hasig.
Nachher Conriche Vara, je kent er zo'n roundabout geta. Ze wel in de maatje. En je Right, wil je toilet de goede wel 3 punten hun ach. Goedisch gebi aas getin gewoon en la gewoon gaan komen die en la vias. Je toilet wil zijn? Ja. Noorden tang. Was is je nesk go heden Augustien wa hulten. an ask geschiede unte die feilsche ask etter amal joost knieven aan een blane innetal riener konnost behulten aan een isekaal is een koers die ga daar wil ga dicht go daar wil hoge dicht is bini kalmer kun ik zijn ask is fikkie kisten se bij.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update on the current Outer Hebrides Flood Risk Management Plan. The detail is in the appendix to the report. There are a number of updates there, and I think I'll just take any questions on the update. Thank you, Chair.
Questions to be Boyle? Ian?
Yeah, just a question. The South Board flood, but there was meant to be a community meeting set up to discuss with communities, and that's been asked, I'm sure, by my colleague Councillor McNeill over the last 2 or 3 years, actually once or twice. But I don't think that's ever been set up. Is that going to happen?
The update there is that it's been removed from Cycle 1 funding. There's been such a change in the area around the environment. It didn't seem to follow the modelled behaviour of the area. And we were aware that there were concerns with what the proposals were in terms of the regeneration of Golan Island. The consultation would have been undertaken as part of the EIA and the marine licensing process. We're looking at a reset of this project just now before it gets submitted to Cycle 2 funding and reviewing what would be the most acceptable options here, because even when you were looking at the conditions of the marine license and the impacts of what the works were going to be proposed, there was probably likely to be objections from an environmental basis on that as well. So there's a bit of a reset on this project to say, well, what should we be looking at? And I think when we get to that stage, then a further public consultation would be the time for that.
Okay, I shall look forward to seeing a date for that. Thanks.
George?
Thank you, Chair. Callum, what, if any, things have taken place that will prevent the potential flooding at the new housing scheme in Branagh? I've seen it flooded, that area flooded extensively twice, albeit it's not frequent, but that's in 15 years. All the way up nearly to the roundabout exiting the airport on the lower side. It is prone to flooding, and have any measures been taken to prevent that with the proposed new housing development?
Who made you saw this, George? Who made you saw them?
I'm sorry, Councillor Murray, I don't have the detail on that. There is a process through planning that is in place. So every development will have to do its own flood risk assessment, which will then inform them what the precautions and what level they can build at.
Yeah, I hear you. But on the face of it, there's been nothing. You know, they've started clearing the site. I'm just thinking about years down the road when if they get planning permission and when these houses revert back to local ownership, the likes of insurance for occupants of these houses, because there doesn't seem to be anything changed from Holland down towards Point. That area is very, very prone to flooding, and unless they've done something magical in the dark of the night, none of the locals have been able to see any difference in the physical nature of the land there that would prevent it. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, it's a very specific question about a development which I don't have the answers to.
No.
If you go through the flood risk management plan, you'll see that that area is a potentially vulnerable area, which each developer would have to take their specific precautions in place. So that will be dealt with through planning. And I'm sorry, I can't give you any further.
No, it just seems that nothing has changed in terms of the physical layout of the area, but I do appreciate what you're saying. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Johnny?
Looking at the assessment of progress of actions in item 7 of the report and the map, it makes sad reading, and I think the quicker they use just to get a tunnel to the mainland, the better.
Ian Yerchi?
Thank you, Chair. In reference to the Castle Bay floods study part, yeah, it's mentioned there's that nothing's commenced because of limitations in funding and staff resource. Could you give me a bit more detail on that and when this will be sorted out?
Well, it's the report is identifying all the potentially vulnerable areas. There's there's resource implications and priorities we need to look at in terms of what we can deliver. With the likes of Castleby in specifics, I don't have a timescale of when that will be able to be undertaken, a full flood study. But within our developments taking place, then there'll be specific flood studies done on that. So the likes of the campus project will be looking at the potential for flooding and development areas. But as for the whole of Castleby, sorry, I don't have an update on when that will be available in more detail.
When would you hope for it to be done? I find it kind of strange, a big project like this, when you head in Castleby, which is in the middle of Castleby, and that's the only bit that's going to be covered in a potential study in a project that's we're just waiting word to start, and hopefully things will be moving very quickly on this one.
Well, the flood study report wouldn't hold up the development of the campus project. The campus project would look at the flood risk in that area in terms of how that scheme would be developed. And I believe some of that work has already been done in identifying drainage capacities and the levels of specific areas such as a football pitch.
Okay.
So it's not going to hold up anything.
Let's just hope it's not a negative finding.
Well, whenever you're doing any development, you have to consider the flood risk. So the Castleby area covers a lot more than the campus area.
Yeah.
But the campus area will take account of the drainage channels and the flood risk in that area. The other side of Castleby as well, which has flooded in the past, will be part of this overall flood study.
Okay, thanks.
Ernest?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, obviously, as a Comhairle, we decided that climate resilient infrastructure was one of our priority areas. So, obviously flooding takes up a big, important part of that. So it's good to see, I think it's something we're just going to have to start putting resource and finance towards, and also looking externally for finance to support the significant issues that we're going to have. It's good to see this, and thanks for the updates that you've given throughout the questions today. This one's probably for Ushjin, I think. I think Professor Stuart Angus, one of the experts on what could be done or what the situation is in Newest. I think that we've been talking about his work for a number of years now, and nothing seems to be taken forward. I think that's an area of work that we should be looking, I don't know, as a Comhairle, but as as a nation. I think that's how important the work that he's proposing is. So it's definitely something we should be trying to engage with if we can.
Mr. Chair, following the Outer Hebrides COP last year, I did meet with Stuart Angus before and after the meeting, and his work is certainly invaluable for areas of South Uist. And what we're working on just now is how we can collate the flood risks in relation to climate change. And at this present time, it's about gathering the information that's relevant. There'll be an update on that specific strategic objective to the March series. But even some of the work we're doing just now in terms of where we're looking at road improvements in Uist are based around where there are the highest flood risk areas. So we're not going to be able to, what I'm trying to say is it's a very complex scenario we're looking at, and the Outer Hebrides, particularly the Uist areas, are the ones that are more vulnerable to both coastal change, climate change, flood risk. So both of these need to be pulled together, the flood risk management aspects as well as the climate change aspects. So that is the core of the work we're trying to do just now.
Sorry, Paul, I should stay.
Paul. Apologies, Chair. I should have left my light on. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Calvin. I suppose that's why it's important that we are moving on these things just now. It's going to take a while for us to sort out. So, identifying what the issues are and trying to get them resolved is really, really important. So, thank you for that.
General Man.
Sorry,
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. A question, I think I asked this around 3 years ago. It's more not so much flooding as coastal erosion. Just got a wee bit of interest. I used to do some surveying down at the around the Lunatic School there. What's the coastal erosion like in that area nowadays? Are we doing checks on it, or is Scottish Government or someone doing checks? I remember it used to get, it was quite bad. Just matter of interest. Thanks.
That links back to the question from Councillor MacLeod in relation to the South Ford area, because the Lunatic Dunes are the north part of that. Looking at the modelling that was undertaken and the potential effects of what you could do, some of the works that could have been done could have had a detrimental effect on the Lunatic Dunes. They continue to erode, and that's why it's such a complex area just now, because the likes of Golan Island, the south end of it, was totally closed up where there was a channel before. So that now most of the flow is actually coming out the north end where the Lunatic Dunes are. I think in painting the picture, it's entirely complex because the environment is so dynamic around us, and we can try to model all we like and predict what's going to happen, but really the environment will do what the environment is going to do, and it's understanding more about where are the really vulnerable areas, what areas do we have to concentrate on. So part of the work we will be doing and taking forward is more of a coastal risk assessment. So looking at the whole coastline, we've got information from Dynamic Coast, which predicts how the coast will behave over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But we've also got LiDAR information that's showing what was happening more recently. We also need to communicate with the communities. So we're putting all these systems in place just now so we can build a better picture. These models will tell us potentially what could happen, but we need to understand more about physically what's happening. I think it's coming around to your own question, Councillor MacLeod, that we need to be monitoring. We need to find ways of seeing where our biggest risks are going to be, and that's part of the next phase of work we'll be undertaking through the. We've got a climate change working group that's been set up through the Outer Hebrides Community Planning Partnership, and it's getting that working in such a way that we're engaging with the likes of the academics, likes of Stuart Angus, the work he's doing. We're engaging with communities. We're engaging with SEPA, Dynamic Coast. So we've been able to collate all this information into a way that we can come back to the chamber and say, these are our priority areas. These are our most vulnerable areas. These are potentially what we may have to do in these areas. And people are talking about, do we defend or do we retreat? Or do we change something in how we use the land that actually protects it for longer? But it's a really dynamic situation we're talking about here, which could very much be exacerbated by climate change, rising sea levels, and the greater frequency of storm events. it's quite complex, and I think being able to get it into the stage where we can come and give you valuable information about where the most vulnerable areas are is what we're intending to do.
Right, I think you were next, Mustafa.
The time scale is really important because, you know, sometimes if we don't do anything, we reach the point of no return in some areas. So, you know, obviously, like you said, the situation is fluid, that if we don't have a time limit when to do the studies and then turn into action, sometimes the point is reach a point of where that place is no longer salvageable and move on. But I was just wanting to raise just a quick clarification about the RAG North Use. You got the red that the studies haven't commenced yet due to limitations of funding and stuff. And do you have any time when you can do that?
We've been doing some work in the back in what we've been directed to as priority areas. So the likes of South Uist, we've been working with Storrs and with Scottish Government, with Scripid, pulling together drainage channel maintenance, things like that, looking at areas where there was an impact and what we can do short term. So the likes of Kildonnan Township, which was an issue a couple of years ago, there was work done there to be able to alleviate that area. But there was further studies undertaken in the catchment looking at, okay, what is actually happening here. So there's a study available for that. With all the potentially vulnerable areas that we've identified, we simply don't have the resource to actually go ahead and do detailed studies in all these areas just now. And that's why it's a matter of prioritization. What can we do just now? How can we get a bit ahead of the game? But as I said as well, these studies are like the likes of the South Ford one, it's so dynamic and quite complex. And that's why I want to be at the stage where I'm being able to take information to you that gives you that knowledge as to where the priority should be. Thankfully, at this point in time, we don't suffer in the Western Isles from inland flooding that to the extent that you see on mainland Scotland just now. But we do have a very vulnerable coastline. And it's about concentrating on that and looking at what the impacts may be. And again, the work that Stuart Angus has done on what Uist used to be like and what Uist could be like is really important to pull in that. But I know that's not a direct answer to when are you going to get this done, but it's just maybe indicating the complexity of the matter.
I mean, is there work in the meantime that we could do with, say, the crofters communities and things like that, quick wins that like cleaning ditches and things like that could actually, you know, prevent obviously deterioration without, you know, obviously while we're waiting for the bigger studies. And
yes, well, that's what I was alluding to there. The work we've done with Storrs and Scottish ministers is collate that drainage work in a way that we all know what everybody else is doing and dealing with the priority areas. There are individual crofters that could potentially do more by cleaning out these drainage channels, and that's what these states are working with. There's also the Muras Cheer project going on in Barra just now, which again is just what you're suggesting there, looking at what the issues are and seeing what the quick wins could be. So like an area in Battersea where they're looking at potential damage being caused by livestock. Is there a way of dealing with that with the crofters? So it's very much a community engagement process where you're working out what's achievable, what's feasible, what's palatable. And I think that project is working very well from that perspective in coordinating these views. So we hope to build on things like that as well.
Thank you.
Waiting a while, Angus.
I am very patient, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, I'm just remembering the dreadful tragedy there was down in Uist a number of years ago, and shortly after that particular incident, I was down in Uist with one of our officers, and I asked if he would take me to the area so that I could see what had happened. And so he took me to a certain point where we stopped, and he said the water was here. I couldn't see the sea from where I was standing. The water had come right in, miles into the island, and that was years ago. And since then, we're told that water levels in the oceans are rising. It seems to me that the Uists are in serious trouble, really, if climate change is not ceased in some way or another. And to be honest, when I was there, I discussed the situation with the officer who was with me. You know, I was speculating on how could they possibly have stopped the water getting, and there was no way. You know, you'd have to build a dike as high as goodness knows what in order to stop the waters. So I understand the problems that you have, Cala. This is a major issue for us, and we're going to need an awful lot of resourcing in order to deal with it. I have the greatest sympathy for my colleagues, but I do remember too attending a meeting some years ago where one of our officers gave a talk to the meeting on the effects of climate change if it wasn't reversed in some way or halted. And it didn't just affect the Uists, it affected Lewis and Harris as well, quite significantly. And in my own particular patch, it affected the Lower Sandwich Beach, for example, and the cemetery there would have been inundated by certain rises in water levels. It's a huge problem. I don't know how on earth you're going to deal with it at all, and it's going to need huge resourcing. So I'm just really sympathizing with the great problems that you have. Thank you.
I don't know if there's really an answer to that other than it's not just my problems. It's all of our problems. And I think, very shortly, answer is we need to understand better what the impacts are likely to be over time and manage these as the highest priority risks. Thank you, Councillor McCauley.
Okay, let me making all hardish, so we're boiling the Huna Molly in a tea point down. Applev, Cusper and Lug, asking Haas the Heen, show us on Fischer. It's in a nest on the diaver, Kupechke, Cusper Dich, behoort een hoffekeden uit Boilig met die Boeier. Uit hier in de lucht comparsed, a Hunio Akel, a nest.